morning, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about the Gulf War in the early 1990s. So, this is a Desert Storm. This is the war with Iraq. Now, when you hear the war in Iraq, all right, if you've never heard about any of this before, you may be thinking about the war in Iraq that resulted from the end of 9/11. Iraq didn't have anything to do with 9/11, but we went to war with Iraq after 9/11 in our war on terrorism stance. It's going to have to work. All right. So, we go to war with Iraq and Saddam Hussein in the early 90s, and then we're going to do it again after 9/11. So the war in Iraq that you're probably aware of, that you've heard mentioned, is probably the more recent one. This one makes for a better story, I guess, because it was much more cut and dried over what our reasons for being involved were. So George H.W. Bush is the president. He's pretty popular. Cold War, we've apparently won that. The whole situation with Panama, we've taken care of that. And then there's this situation called the Gulf War, all right, which, spoiler alert, America's going to win and be very popular, all right, in the Middle East of all places. So here's what happens. There's a country called Iraq in the Middle East. Their leader is a turd. His name is Saddam Hussein. He's a jerk. He is part of OPEC. He rules his country with an iron fist. His country is Muslim, but it is a problem because the Muslim countries are not big fans of him. All right, so Saddam Hussein is a massive turd bucket, generally all around. Everybody knows that in the Middle East. His own people aren't big fans of him. They don't like him. The issue ends up being that he is very greedy. He has some oil in his country, but there's a little country that kind of blocks his access to the coast called Kuwait that has a ton of oil. Kuwait is also in OPEC. Saddam Hussein one day, just being a jerk, invades Kuwait, another Middle Eastern country, to take over their oil reserves. So Saddam has created a huge army and he invades Kuwait. America doesn't like this because this gives Saddam Hussein more control over oil and could increase oil rates in OPEC. The Middle East was not prepared to do this. The Middle East can't go stand up to Saddam Hussein. So they come to the United Nations and say, hey, can y'all help us out? We don't like the Saddam Hussein guy taking over Kuwait because he's just being a jerk and being a bully. Can you help us out? America's like, yes, sir. Like, we're the new sheriff in town. We got this. So the United Nations gets together and declares war on Iraq. So the whole world wants us here. The Middle East wants us here. Like Saudi Arabia lets us go set up shop in Saudi Arabia. The Middle East asks America to come in and erect shop. These are wars that are popular for America. And these are wars that we're good at. Because who are we shooting? We're shooting soldiers from Iraq. And where are they at? In Kuwait. So we go into Kuwait. The Kuwaiti people want us there. And who are we shooting? Iraqi people that are wearing Iraqi uniforms. So these are very good wars that America, like, there's no technical, like, do people like us, don't they? They want us there and they want us to shoot the bad guys. It's good guy versus bad guy. That's how it plays out, and it works really, really, really good. So Bush puts General Colin Powell in charge. So the head general in this war is General Colin Powell. All right. So I have a picture of him here. This is a picture of General Colin Powell, which is important in American history because he is the first black head of an entire war effort. And it's going to go really, really well. So Colin Powell gets a lot of credit for this war here in Iraq when we go in and we are going to, like, officially declare war on Iraq. So I got some video clips here. And I got video clips here.
We're dealing with Hitler revisited, a totalitarianism and a brutality that is naked and unprecedented in modern times.
Saddam Hussein, president of Iraq. The desert dictator sends 5,000 tanks and 500,000 soldiers into the tiny nation of Kuwait, his neighbor to the south. The invasion catches the White House off guard. The issue is oil and land. Hussein had accused Kuwait of stealing billions of dollars in black gold from the Rumaila oil field near the Iraq-Kuwaiti border.
It was Colin Powell, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who saw that on television and went, whoa!
Saddam Hussein sends tens of thousands of troops to the Saudi Arabian border. More than half the world's oil reserves are within his grasp. The U.S. carrier battle group Independence is en route from the Indian Ocean. The commander-in-chief draws a line in the sand of the Persian Gulf. Saddam Hussein has an army of 500,000 men outfitted with U.S. and Soviet armament. The Persian Gulf is his territory.
All right, so we're going to call this Operation Desert Storm. So America, we show up, and the fighting is going to take place in Kuwait. All right, so we show up, and we have all these fancy new weapons that we haven't been able to use, that we've been developing for the Cold War that we haven't been able to use, and we get to show them off here, and it is, we call it shock and awe. All right. So we've learned stuff from like Vietnam. There's no way we're letting our media just wander around. We're very selective on what they see. But we have stuff like stealth bombers now. This is the first time we're really going to use them, which are these bombers that can just fly right over top of you, and they're really quiet. They're like basically undetectable on radar. And we have like laser guided missiles now, like stuff we had like Predator drones and laser guided stuff. This is the first time it gets used. Like we can pinpoint, we can take a building out in the middle of a city that has bad guys in it and not hurt the rest of the city. Like we can blow up one individual building and we're super exact. We absolutely dominate this war and the Iraq invasion. It's in the middle of the desert. If they try to fight in the middle of the desert, we fly over with our airplanes and just absolutely wipe them out. We lose the United Nations. All the countries combined lose a total of 300 troops. All right. Iraq loses 10,000 soldiers. We just, we call it the shock and awe to see what we can do. And the rest of the world's like, oh, crap. Like, it is obviously, after Iraq, countries can't go toe-to-toe with us militarily, like with our technology of what we have developed when other countries weren't aggressively developing their military. And we show it off in Iraq. So if they're in the middle of the desert, we just go over and wipe them out. And then like by the time our troops show up to fight, there's nothing left because there's nowhere to hide in the desert. So most of our attacking took place with airplanes and these all types of stuff. A lot of times by the time we showed up to actually fight, the Iraqi troops were so terrified by everything else that had happened, they just almost immediately surrender. So it doesn't take long to kind of force the Iraqis to leave Kuwait and force them back into Iraq. Saddam Hussein is a massive jerk. He sets all the oil fields on fire when he leaves. Like all of Kuwait's oil, he just sets it on fire. He's like, well, I can't have it, nobody can have it, and just sets it on fire. I remember it was supposed to take something crazy like years to put out all these fires. We put them out in like 3 weeks because it's oil. We wanted it. So we were able to push Saddam Hussein and his men out of Kuwait back into Iraq. We legally probably could have gone and taken out Saddam, but we really thought in the 90s that since we'd wiped out all his troops and he's already disliked in Iraq, that he would get taken out somehow in Iraq anyway and we wouldn't have to deal with it. We were wrong on that because he stays in power and we end up fighting him again in a decade after this. But this is the Operation Desert Storm, called the Persian Gulf War. We absolutely dominated this war from start to finish.
2 weeks since the Iraqi invasion, and 50,000 U.S. troops are digging in along the Saudi border. The president orders his top soldier, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell, to Saudi Arabia. He wants Powell and Schwarzkopf to spell out exactly what they need to win a war. In a matter of weeks, the United States would have more troops on the ground in the Persian Gulf than it had ever had in Vietnam. January 17th, the commander-in-chief unleashes a desert storm.
Launch.
It will become known as Hyper War. Like the German Blitzkrieg, Hyper War is meant to overwhelm the enemy with non-stop lightning-quick attacks. Precision-guided munitions, smart bombs, delivered by F-117 stealth bombers, are designed to provide pinpoint accuracy. The objective? Decapitate the enemy. The first 24 hours set the tone for a one-sided war. The coalition flies 2,000 sorties, dropping 2,500 tons of munitions, losing 8 aircraft, but only 1 American killed. Reporters in Vietnam had roamed the war zones on their own. In the Persian Gulf, this would not be allowed.
I'm now going to show you a picture of the luckiest man in Iraq.
The daily briefing defines the coverage given to the nation.
Right through the crosshairs. And now in his rearview mirror.
The Allies own the skies. Sensing defeat, Saddam changes tactics. More than 600 oil wells are set ablaze. Nearly 500 million gallons of oil spilled into the Persian Gulf. If he couldn't have it, no one would.
They're just, we're going to back away from them a little bit. Our gun is out of ammo at this time. Everything seems to be going.
The commander-in-chief's hyperwar has destroyed the enemy's ability to fight and his will to win.
Basically, as we pull up to the positions, they see the armor, the heavy tanks are rolling up. They just surrender so far.
The Allies had achieved their objectives in 43 days of war.
I can report to the nation, aggression is defeated, the war is over.
When everybody came home again, we had this tremendous outpouring of patriotic fervor, if you will, in the United States. People felt really good about what we'd done, and the troops did especially. It was a great sense of happiness and satisfaction and success at what we had accomplished as a nation.
This is a picture of the tanks in Kuwait when he got there, and you can see the oil fields burning in the background that Saddam, just a jerk, had set on fire when he left. But we were able to put those out a lot sooner than they were saying that we would be able to. All right. So, Bush's term. This dude was the president when the Cold War ended, beat Panama, just went into the Middle East, saved the Middle East. Middle East loves us, right? I mean, gas is like less than $1 a gallon now. Everything is fantastic. His approval rating in 1991, where is it? Is it 89%? 89%. I mean, that's like one of the biggest mandates you ever had. People love George Bush. Now, he is going to lose re-election in 1992. And it is, people look at this. So like the history books, I put this on here because they have to justify why it was. Well, why did this super popular president, he's Reagan, why is he going to turn around and lose in 1992 in the election when he's super popular? They love to talk about his not having a grasp on domestic policies, like the massive growth that we were seeing in the 1980s wasn't sustainable and stuff like that. There's a much more cut and dry reason why he's going to lose in 1992 without trying to tear him down. Because George H.W. Bush, in really any other situation, is going to win re-election. But he doesn't. He's probably one of the more liked, if not the most liked, outside of being assassinated or something, the most liked one-term president that we've had. The reason that he loses it is really has to do more with the election of how people were voting in 1992 than really him doing anything wrong. But historically, they like to go back, why did he lose? Well, because of some of the domestic stuff, not creating enough jobs and stuff like that, they will point to that. But we'll talk about that here in a second. The unemployment rate is still struggling. So while we're making money, the unemployment rate is struggling. His approval rating had dropped drastically by 1992. He still should absolutely able to win, but by 1992 it was an election year. And then let's watch this and I'll explain it to you.
The final lesson of George Herbert Walker Bush may be that victory on the battlefield, no matter how decisive, cannot guarantee victory at the ballot box. And the mistakes of the past cannot be overcome by turning away from the problems of the present. He would be voted out of office 20 months after presiding over the most clear-cut military victory in American history.
So even there, they're like, he just messed it all up. And then the guy he's going to lose to in 1992 is this guy, Bill Clinton. So he's going to lose to Bill Clinton. So when he loses to Bill Clinton, everybody's like, man, not only must have George H.W. Bush been doing things wrong, Bill Clinton must have been like the greatest candidate of all time. So they kind of build him up to explain why this happened. I need to explain the election in 1992 and how things work out, and it'll make sense to you. This is a photograph as we're going to start talking about Bill Clinton's presidency. This is JFK, and this is Bill Clinton when he was a young man shaking JFK's hand. All right. Ross Perot. It's spelled Ross Perot. Ross Perot is the reason Bill Clinton becomes president in 1992 instead of George H.W. Bush. All right. George H.W. Bush is a Republican, and he is going to run for election. There's no question that there's some stuff that needs to be turned around in the economy with the job creations and stuff like that. That needs to get fixed. That is a big blemish on George H.W. Bush's time in office. Bill Clinton is a Democrat who's extremely young compared to your typical president running for president. So Ross Perot is a billionaire oil tycoon from Texas. He's like, hey, if you elect me, I'm going to run America like a business. I'm going to get everybody jobs again and all that. So Ross Perot, who with no real political experience, I got a picture here of Ross Perot. That's old Ross Perot there. He's going to run for president as a third party in 1992. The Republicans are going to split their vote. A lot of Republicans like Ross Perot because he's going to fix the economy. He's going to run it like a business. So a lot of people who normally would have voted for George Bush are going to vote for Ross Perot. So the Republican vote really gets split between Ross Perot and George Bush. There's really no Democrats that are going to vote for Ross Perot in large numbers. So all the Democrats are going to vote for Bill Clinton, which at the end of the day, who has more votes is going to end up being this guy, Bill Clinton, who wins the election in 1992 in large part because Ross Perot took votes from George H.W. Bush.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Alrighty, that is as far as we're going to get today. It's a short day. You're